Russian forces have regained some momentum and advanced towards the center of Bakhmut, after months of clashes for control of the embattled eastern Ukrainian city, according to a new intelligence update. Russian military and mercenary forces have likely been joined by airborne troops, the British Defense Ministry said in a post to Twitter, adding that a key supply route for Ukraine to the west of Bakhmut is likely severely threatened. They have likely reached the town center, controlling the west bank of the Bakhmutka River that runs through the settlement, the ministry wrote. On Thursday, the Washington-based Institute for the Study of War think tank said Russian forces had continued with ground attacks in the city, making a marginal advance in central Bakhmut. On Friday, the Ukrainian General Staff of the Armed Forces said Russia continues to focus on offensive operations in Bakhmut. Battles for Bakhmut continue, Andriy Yermak, the head of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's office, said on Thursday. They roam the streets, the enemy's attempts to surround the city fail, he wrote, reiterating Zelensky's previous label of the city as a fortress. The Pentagon is investigating a reported security breach that saw documents that provide details of US and NATO plans to help prepare Ukraine for a spring offensive against Russia have leaked to social media platforms, the New York Times reports. We are aware of the reports of social media posts, and the department is reviewing the matter, Deputy Press Secretary of the U.S. Department of Defense Sabrina Singh said. The documents were spread on Twitter and Telegram, and reportedly contain charts and details about weapons deliveries, battalion strengths and other sensitive information, the Times said. Information in the documents is at least 5 weeks old, with the most recent dated March 1, the report said. One of the documents summarized the training schedules of 12 Ukraine combat brigades, and said 9 of them were being trained by US and NATO forces. Europe's greatest armed conflict since World War II is poised to see the largest mobilized effort since the war in Ukraine began as Kyiv prepares for an anticipated spring offensive. Fox News quoted analysis of experts from the Institute for the Study of War, ISW, as saying that, based on information revealed by Russia and Ukraine, it can be seen that Kyiv is preparing for a new wave of attacks. Equally important. George Barros, a Russia analyst and leader of the Geospatial Intelligence Group at the Institute for War Studies, said, the potential counteroffensive of Ukraine in the near future could redraw the map of the region, if they succeed. Barros said that he and his colleagues predict that the new blow of Ukraine may take place within the next 2 months. Since December, Bakhmut has been a key battleground, witnessing brutal skirmishes, with trench warfare-like patterns, like a World War scene. However, analysts from the Institute for the Study of War believe that Ukraine and Russia are aiming for a greater reward, the Zaporizhzhia region. This is where Russian President Vladimir Putin announced the annexation at the end of September. According to the Institute, Zaporizhzhia is of considerable value to both Ukraine and Russia. Barros explained that Ukraine needs this area to access the seaport of Azov and the mineral industry, in the Zaporizhzhia region and the Donetsk region to the east. At the same time, Zaporizhzhia is also a springboard for Ukraine to regain control of some areas of Kherson, from Russia. Zaporizhzhia is located between Kherson and Donetsk, so this place is also extremely important, if Ukraine is to regain sea routes as far west as Odessa, as well as prevent Russia's ability to resupply Crimean forces, via Kherson. Ukraine can take back the Zaporizhzhia area, to push Russian forces out of Kherson, and advance northeast through Donetsk and into the Crimean Peninsula, which Russia has controlled since 2014. If so, Kyiv must ensure guarantee to master all the routes mentioned above. Barros pointed out that the scale of Ukraine's upcoming spring counterattack is expected to double that of last year's attack. In addition, Kyiv deployed elite new brigades to lead the assault forces. The analyst added that Ukraine could repeat the same tactics last year and target many key areas, such as Bakhmut. The research team at the Institute for the Study of War assessed that Ukraine could win the war against Russia, if it took advantage of the time when Moscow was still hesitant to mobilize more troops to the front line. At the same time, Moscow's forces in Ukraine are also short of weapons and somewhat mentally exhausted. According to ISW, Ukraine will pose a series of military and logistical dilemmas for the Russian military, thereby forcing Moscow to shift the focus of its plans. Kyiv has said that they will try to end the war by the end of the year. However, after about 4 months, Russia, Ukraine had nothing to break through, U.S. defense officials, including Chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff General Mark Milley, expressed doubts about that possibility. Commenting on the situation, Barros said that a period of stagnation in the conflict is normal. That break allows troops to re-equip and recuperate. If Ukraine wants to end the war quickly, it will continue to push through the winter months, but on condition that the United States and NATO provide adequate military aid. The Institute for the Study of War has reported that Russian military commanders are now forming specialized company-sized Storm Z units to be deployed in urban combat and to capture key Ukrainian strongholds. The ISW cited information obtained by an anonymous Ukrainian reserve officer, whom the ISW called a reliable source. According to this information, Storm Z companies appear to be formed of newly recruited reservists. Each Storm Z company allegedly comprises 100 personnel and is intended to conduct urban combat operations or operations in complicated geographic areas to capture important and strategic objects such as strongholds, command posts, and communication centers. According to the ISW, the new companies will likely primarily deploy along the Avdiivka-Donetsk city frontline, where Southern Military District (SMD) units are heavily committed to continuously unsuccessful offensive operations. The ISW added that the personnel that staff these companies receive 10 to 15 days of refresher training, a remarkably short amount of time to adequately train personnel, even reservists with some experience, to perform complex combat tasks and create unit cohesion. Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva suggested on Thursday that Ukraine cede the Black Sea Peninsula to Russia to end the war, adding his Ukrainian counterpart cannot want everything. At a press conference on April 6, the Brazilian president said, "The Russian president cannot occupy Ukraine's territory. The Crimean Peninsula issue may continue to be discussed in the near future. The owner of the Kremlin needs to consider what he wants." Similarly, the president of Ukraine cannot be too ambitious and want to have everything in hand. The world needs peace, we have to find a solution. It is known that Russia unilaterally annexed the Crimean Peninsula in 2014, despite protests from Ukraine and the international community. Ukraine had hoped that political and diplomatic measures could help it return to control of the peninsula, but everything fell apart when hostilities broke out in February last year. So far, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky still refuses to negotiate with Moscow. Ukraine demanded that Russia withdraw all troops from the country. Western allies, especially the United Kingdom, support this position. There are also many objections to Ukraine's ceding of Crimea to Russia, as it may encourage Moscow to launch new attacks and gain more Ukrainian territory. Meanwhile, according to a survey, a majority of Kyiv people also oppose the transfer of Crimea. A poll in February and March by the Kyiv International Institute of Sociology found that 87% of Ukrainians view any decision to concede territory to establish peace with Russia as unacceptable. Meanwhile, 64% of Ukrainians want to regain all of their territory, including Crimea. Although vague, Brazil's President Lula has also made a proposal to mediate the conflict. He is expected to present his proposal to Chinese President Xi Jinping during his visit to Beijing next week. Not stopping there, Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva on April 7 criticized the US and EU for being hesitant to find a peaceful solution to the crisis in Ukraine. The leader said that developed countries, especially the European Union and the United States, should not rush to join the conflict without paying attention to the opportunity to negotiate. President da Silva stressed that Brazil supports the territorial integrity of all countries, and does not support Russia's special military operation in Ukraine. He said that both Russia and Ukraine are waiting for other countries to act as a bridge for peace. Last month, the leader also affirmed that Russia is the guarantor of lasting peace in the world. The Brazilian president also proposed the establishment of a new international mechanism, which would form the basis for negotiations between Moscow and Kyiv. He also expressed his willingness to act as a mediator in direct negotiations between Russian President Vladimir Putin and his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky. According to U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, Volodymyr Zelensky, as the head of state, should make the decision on the regaining of Crimea, taking into account the will of Ukrainians. Ukraine is a democratic country. President Volodymyr Zelensky is responsible for leading the country. But he must also be open to the will of Ukrainians, Blinken told Funk Mediengruppe, commenting on the regaining of Crimea. As he states, along with many other countries, the US is ready to help Ukraine protect its territorial integrity, sovereignty, and independence and regain the occupied parts of the country. This includes a counteroffensive that will probably begin in the coming weeks, Blinken noted. Speaking in the US Congress the other day, Blinken suggested that diplomacy might still play a role, as Kyiv might decide not to regain all the territories by military means. Mikhailo Podolyak, advisor to the head of the president's office, assured on April 6 that Ukraine would not make concessions to Russia in the Crimea issue. French President Emmanuel Macron has urged Chinese President Xi Jinping not to provide any weapons to Russia for its invasion of Ukraine. French diplomatic sources say Macron pressed the Chinese leader on the issue during their meeting in Beijing on Thursday. China has close ties with Russia. The two leaders also agreed that no one should use nuclear weapons. She later held talks with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. The EU chief said she referred to the issue of Taiwan during her meeting with Xi, and stressed that stability in the Taiwan Strait is of paramount importance. She added that nobody should unilaterally change the status quo by force in the region. The Chinese Foreign Ministry said she responded that the Taiwan question is the core of China's core interests. He added that expecting China to compromise on the Taiwan question would only be wishful thinking and self-defeating. A senior U.S. lawmaker said on Friday he was doing everything possible to speed up the delivery of weapons to Taiwan, suggesting other countries that have the arms could sell them onto the island with U.S. government permission. Speaking to reporters during a trip to Taiwan, Michael McCaul, chairman of the U.S. House of Representatives Foreign Affairs Committee, stressed the island needs to be able to access weapons as it faces challenges from China. On the arms issue, we are doing everything in our power to expedite the transfer, McCaul said during a meeting with Taiwan's legislative head Yu Si-kun. He stressed the need to help Taiwan become stronger and support the island's defense capabilities. According to the U.S. official, some proposals to deliver weapons to Taiwan more quickly include changing priorities and asking the U.S. government to allow other countries to supply weapons to the island. Since last year, Taiwan has been vocal about delays in shipments of weapons from the U.S., such as the Stinger anti-aircraft missile, as manufacturers shifted supplies to Ukraine. The United States is Taiwan's most important arms supplier, a move that China frequently criticizes. According to Reuters, McCaul is leading a delegation to visit Taiwan, which coincides with a meeting between Tsai Ing-wen and U.S. House of Representatives Speaker Kevin McCarthy in Los Angeles. Unlike last year, when Nancy Pelosi's visit angered China and held a series of military exercises, Beijing was quieter this time before the meeting took place on U.S. soil. China has always considered Taiwan as a province awaiting reunification, and is ready to use force to withdraw if necessary. NHK reported that President Tsai Ing-wen on April 7 called on China to exercise restraint after Beijing warned of a meeting between Tsai and U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy in Los Angeles. Tsai made the statement after meeting with reporters. According to the leader, the opportunity to meet directly with U.S. officials is beneficial for peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. She stressed that it is normal for a Taiwanese leader to transit in the U.S., and hopes that China will exercise restraint and not overreact. Regarding the view that the U.S. would not assist Taiwan in an emergency, Tsai said such suspicions were due to lack of information. Talking about her recent trip, Tsai stated that she felt strong support from the U.S. for the island. According to her, discussions with the Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives and members of the U.S. Congress sent a clear message to the people of Taiwan and to the world. In another related development, talking about the meeting between Tsai and Kevin McCarthy in the U.S., Chief Cabinet Secretary Matsuno Hirokazu said the country was closely monitoring the situation. He said that the peace and stability of the Taiwan Strait is not only important to Japan's security but also to the stability of the international community. He added that Tokyo hopes the issue will be resolved peacefully through dialogue. Matsuno also said that Japan will continue its diplomatic efforts, including directly talking to China about the importance of peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. The Japanese government has decided to extend its sanctions against North Korea for 2 years. It's cited as a reason Pyongyang's frequent ballistic missile launches. Japan imposed its own sanctions in 2006 after North Korea carried out nuclear tests and launched ballistic missiles. Two sanctions measures, a ban on port calls by North Korean registered ships and a total trade embargo, are set to expire on April 13. The government decided on Friday to extend the two measures for 2 more years. Tokyo says Pyongyang has continued to carry out different kinds of ballistic missile tests. It adds the frequency of the tests is unprecedented. The government also cited a lack of progress in the effort to resolve the issue of Japanese nationals abducted by the North. Chief Cabinet Secretary Matsuno Hirokazu said Japan will work with the international community and do its utmost to find a comprehensive solution to the abductions issue and the matter of Pyongyang's nuclear and missile programs. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol on April 7 selected 2 officials to take the position of the new Korean ambassador to the U.S. and the new deputy foreign minister, the president's office announced. President Yoon Suk-yeol on Friday tapped Ambassador to Russia Chang Ho-jin for first vice foreign minister, his office said. Yoon also nominated current first vice foreign minister Cho Hyun-dong to be ambassador to the United States, according to presidential spokesperson Lee Do-woon. The nominations come after the sudden replacement of National Security Advisor Kim Sung-han last week over alleged lapses in planning for Yoon's state visit to Washington later this month. Kim was replaced by Ambassador to the U.S. Cho Tae-yong. Both Chang and Cho are career diplomats. Chang previously served as ambassador to Cambodia, while Cho Hyun-dong served as minister at the South Korean embassy in Washington, among other posts. An international group of doctors says a vaccine against respiratory syncytial virus, or RSV, was effective in preventing severe infections in newborns, when it was given to women during pregnancy. RSV infections can cause cold-like symptoms, particularly in infants and young children. In some cases, they can also cause severe illnesses, such as pneumonia. The team conducted clinical trials in 18 countries using an RSV vaccine developed by the U.S. firm Pfizer. It published its findings in the New England Journal of Medicine on Wednesday. The doctors reported that the shot was 81.8% effective in preventing severe illnesses in infants during the first 90 days of life. They added that the vaccine was 69.4% effective during the first 180 days. The results also showed that the vaccine was 57.1% effective in preventing symptoms from developing during the first 90 days and 51.3% effective during the first 180 days. The group says it did not identify any safety concerns. Germany and France are joining the EU Commission's infringement proceedings against Hungary over its anti-LGBT law, a German government spokesperson said on Thursday. The European Commission referred Hungary to the Court of Justice of the EU in mid-2022 over the law banning the use of materials seen as promoting homosexuality and gender change in schools. The Commission has said it considers the law violates the EU's internal market rules, the fundamental rights of individuals and EU values. The law was criticized by human rights groups and international watchdogs as discriminating against LGBT people and labeled a disgrace by European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. The government of Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán, who presents himself as a defender of traditional family Catholic values, touted as protecting children with new laws. According to the German government, 14 EU member states have now joined the proceedings: Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, Denmark, Portugal, Ireland, Spain, Malta, Austria, Sweden, Slovenia, Finland and now France and Germany. NHK has learned that Tokyo police have obtained arrest warrants for 19 Japanese nationals on suspicion of running phone scams from Cambodia targeting people in Japan. Investigative sources say Cambodian authorities searched a hotel room in the southern city of Sihanoukville in January and discovered a list of Japanese citizens believed to be targets in a fraud scheme. The sources say Japanese police found that the list includes the name of a Tokyo resident in her 60s who was defrauded of about 250,000 yen, or some $1,900, in electronic money in January. The sources say the victim had received a phone call in which she was fraudulently told she was behind on a payment for an online service. They say Tokyo police suspect involvement by 19 Japanese nationals staying at the Cambodian hotel. The police are expected to transfer the suspects from Cambodia to Japan for their imminent arrest. The police believe the suspects carried out phone scams from Cambodia because they thought the operation was less likely to be uncovered than in Japan. Chile on Thursday, April 6, signed new laws and allocated $1.5 billion to fight crime amid skyrocketing perceptions of insecurity and a day after the third police officer in less than a month was killed on duty. The Chilean government has announced $1.5 billion in increased security and enacted 4 new laws to combat organized crime, drug trafficking and other crimes. The new measures include criminalizing extortion, as well as increasing penalties for kidnapping and gun possession. A new law has just been enacted that provides increased penalties for crimes against or assaults police, and allows authorities to use stronger force if their lives and others are threatened. Human rights groups, including Amnesty International, have criticized the law. The organization has released an article pointing out that Chile's new law could lead to police abuse of power, and is a setback in efforts to push for reform of the security force. Especially when Chile's police force has faced accusations of human rights abuses, after strong crackdowns, with protests for equality in 2019. However, in recent times, Chile's police have also been attacked. On April 5, police officer Daniel Palma, 33, was killed in the line of duty, in central Santiago. Palma is the third police officer to be attacked, in less than a month. The incident provoked a backlash from the public. The head of Sudan's army said on Thursday, April 6, he remained committed to a plan for a new transition towards elections, despite disputes over the integration of a paramilitary force that have twice delayed the signing of a final deal. As of 2019, Sudan is governed by a coalition of military and civilian groups. However, on October 25, the army dissolved the government and took control of the country, sparking outrage. The recent delay in the transfer of power has made many people even more frustrated. As noted by Reuters, protesters gathered in the central area of Khartoum, chanting, "The army cannot rule the country." Crowds blocked off major roads and marched through many cities, many even eating their fasting Ramadan on the streets. Security forces used tear gas to control the situation. It is known that the international community has strongly supported an agreement to promote the formation of a civilian government, ending the vacuum in the Sudanese political machine since the coup occurred in October 2021. However, Sudan's army and powerful paramilitary support forces have yet to reach a final agreement, after 2 delays. The two sides have so far continued to negotiate on military restructuring. Tensions between the military and paramilitary forces have increased in recent weeks, citing disagreements over the timeframe for merging the paramilitary forces, sources told Reuters. The military wants the process to be completed in 2 years, while the paramilitary forces want it to take 10 years, along with asking the army to reform itself internally. The paramilitary also suggested that Sudan's next civilian head of state would need to agree to join a council, which would include the leadership of the army and paramilitary forces. In a statement on March 6, Suda Army Commander General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan said he remained committed to the political process, aiming to transfer power to the civilian government. However, the parties need time to establish a solid framework, to maintain momentum for the revolution. The agreement also faced opposition from the Committee of Resistance Defending Democracy. They have refused to negotiate with the military and have organized many anti-military demonstrations since the coup. Activist Ghaffar Khedr said, "We still want to emphasize the message of no negotiation, no cooperation and no legitimacy. This is the path we follow. We will not negotiate, nor will the people of Sudan engage in dialogue with the leader of the coup, which committed crimes against humanity." 2 people died and more than 1 million were without power on Thursday after an ice storm hit Canada's 2 most populated provinces ahead of a holiday weekend, bringing freezing rain and strong winds that toppled trees and weighed down power lines. Just under 1 million people did not have power in Quebec and about 110,000 in Ontario as of 4 p.m. 20 o'clock GMT, according to Power Outage. Com outages combined for both provinces had crossed at least 1.3 million earlier in the day. Electricity providers in both provinces were working to restore power, but repairs were expected to continue for days, meaning many Canadians could spend Easter weekend in the dark. 1 man was killed in Quebec when a tree fell on him, Premier François Legault said at a briefing, cautioning people to watch out for live wires and weakened trees. Another man died in eastern Ontario when he was struck by a falling branch, broadcaster CTV News reported. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who was elected to Parliament in a Montreal constituency, offered to provide federal assistance if required. Residents of Peru's northern regions were submerged in dangerous floodwater on Wednesday, April 5, after storms and subsequent floods destroyed houses, schools, and crops. Footage captured by a witness on Wednesday showed a man covered in mud after surviving a mud flow in the city of Canchake as people gathered to help him. In Chilicanas, residents tried to secure a three-wheeler motorcycle carrying 12 passengers that had turned upside down in the muddy water torrent. In Cajamarca, a mother and her 11-year-old son died after being swept away by a mudslide, local media reported. Between April 2 and 3, there were more thunderstorms in the Piura region than what was expected in an entire month, the national news agency Andina reported. Peru's National Hydrology and Meteorology Service, CENAMI, said the rainfall will continue throughout the Easter holidays. Colombia's government is trying to speed up the evacuation of some 2,500 families living closest to the Nevado del Ruiz volcano, which is being monitored for a possible eruption, but some residents are refusing to leave. Reuters reported on April 7 that Colombia raised the danger level from the volcano to orange, after recording an increase in seismic activity. Chances are high, the volcano could erupt this week or next. President Gustavo Petro ordered a faster evacuation, while disaster officials said farmers could return to tend to livestock or take them with them to evacuate. Still, some residents, including families who survived the 1985 eruption, said they would not evacuate. Evelio Ortiz, a farmer residing in the area between Tolima and Caldas provinces, said he did not feel afraid because he had experience facing disasters. If the situation remains the same, then there is nothing to fear. Evelio Ortiz affirmed. According to Colombia's National Disaster Management Agency, the eruption could affect an area of 6 provinces, with a population of about 57,000 people. Timely evacuation is essential, especially as poor infrastructure can make it difficult to communicate with residents living near volcanic eruptions. It is known that Nevado del Ruiz is a stratified mixed volcano. The 1985 eruption was Colombia's largest ever natural disaster and the 4th deadliest eruption in human history. At that time, avalanches along with snow buried entire residential areas, killing more than 25,000 people. Residents of the Brazilian southern city of Blumenau were in shock after a kindergarten attack on Wednesday, April 5, left 4 children dead and 4 others injured. The attacker was later put under arrest, according to the local police. Local residents from the southern Santa Catarina state left flowers outside a preschool where hours earlier a 25-year-old man climbed the wall with a small axe and attacked students between 5 and 7 years old, according to officials. At this moment the classes have been suspended. At this moment we have to show solidarity to the families, Blumenau's Education Deputy Secretary, Patricia Lourdes, told Reuters. We live here in the region, we have children studying at schools and near the kindergarten and we put ourselves in their victims' shoes. They could have been our children too. I hope that everybody comes here to bring some support. It's not an easy situation, it's quite difficult. There will be no more rummaging in the bottom of your bag for a forgotten hand cream or water bottle at London City Airport after it became the first of the capital's hubs to scrap the 100 ml liquid limit rule. Thanks to new high-tech scanners, travelers going through security at City will be able to carry up to 2 liters of liquid, will not have to put toiletries in a separate bag and can leave laptops and other electronics in their hand luggage. Britain wants the new scanners installed at all airports by June 2024, helping ease security queues as passengers will no longer have to take multiple items out of their bags. London City, 10 miles east of central London and mainly serving European destinations, is the busiest British airport to introduce the technology so far, following smaller operator Teesside in northeast England earlier this year. Britain introduced the 100 ml liquid rule at airports in 2006 when police foiled an attack plot involving liquid explosives at Heathrow. A handful of airports in the United States plus Amsterdam's Schiphol hub have already installed the high-tech scanners. Britain's biggest airport, Heathrow, has trialed them. An Italian artist named Dario Gamberin recently painted a unique giant portrait of Pablo Picasso, to pay homage to the Spaniard on the 50th anniversary of his death. The work was painted by Dambarin on a 25,000 square meters abandoned site in the municipality of Castagnaro in the province of Verona using a tractor. The male artist shared that this work was inspired by Picasso's self-portrait made in 1907. Pablo Ruiz Picasso, 1881–1973, commonly known as Pablo Picasso or Picasso, was a famous Spanish painter and sculptor. Picasso is considered one of the most prominent painters of the 20th century. He, along with the French painter Georges Braque, are the two founders of Cubism in painting and sculpture.